Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot for April 14th. So, I want to take a look today at what is going on with the Kushners. You know, Jared somehow got this whole pandemic portfolio dropped on his lap like everything else Trump drops on his lap. But it doesn't seem to me like he knows what he's doing, and it doesn't seem to me like anybody else has any confidence in what he's doing. Ivanka, unless I'm missing something, seems to have been quite quiet lately. And so I just think it's maybe time to check in on the Kushners and see how they're doing and see what's going on in their little world as chaos reigns over Trump, the White House, the administration, and as a result, the country. So let's take a look, see what's going on with them, because, in some ways they're like toddlers, when they're quiet too long, that's when you get really worried, right? Because something's going on. So let's just take a look, see, and see what we can find. So come on down, because I have a question. One more shuffle. Okay, so we'll do one final shuffle and find out what we can find out. Jared, Ivanka, Kushner. Jared, Ivanka, Kushner. Jared, Ivanka, Kushner. Oh, look how nice of them to show up right from the get-go. Of course, it's always about money for them. It's always about image. It's always about looking good. And what comes right down to it, it's always about what they have, what they want, what they can get. Wow, this sort of in its own way kind of just tells the whole story about them, doesn't it? You know, it's a sad thing because both of these cards, both the Ten of Pentacles and the Ten of Cups, in normal readings, are considered really kind of good cards to have. And yet with them, when it comes up, it is always about greed. It is always about image. It is always about adoration. I don't know why they keep thinking they're being adored. I don't know who adores them. But my God, it certainly does play into the dynamics between these two. And everything boils down to money and possessions, how much they have, how much they need to spend, how much. It's just how their heads are wired. So, this is the really crazy thing about Trump. And I can't figure out if Ivanka is unbelievably naive and brainwashed, spoiled, or if there is actually some degree of shrewdness to her. And I sort of constantly bop back and forth because it kind of depends on what area you're looking at. I mean, as she was growing up, she was like apparently a real spoiled brat, and I'm not so sure that has changed. So I guess the question is, and this is the thing, right? I don't believe in blaming the parents for the adult child's behavior. I don't care if it's Donald Trump or it's his kids or it's anybody else. There is a point where, as an adult, you make decisions about whether the environment you were raised in is going to impact your life in a positive or negative way. It's a conscious decision. So by the time somebody's in their, mid to late 20s into their 30s, you can no longer excuse their behavior by saying, oh, he wasn't loved enough by his mother. Or Oh, she was overindulged by her father because he has sort of some weird little feelings about his baby girl. You, it's time to not excuse this kind of behavior. I mean, I know some people who really have heartbreaking stories to tell about the environments that they were raised in. And honestly, um, it's one of two roads, right? Either they have just sort of, they use that for the excuse and the reason for everything. They never try to fix anything because that's their identity and their persona. That's what they've accepted. And then there's that other category of people who rise so far above the way they were raised. And I'm talking about rise in terms of their emotions, in terms of their mental stability, that kind of thing. And so sorry, I digress a little bit there. But my point is that whatever she is now is not a complete result of what she was back whenever. It's time for her to take full-on responsibility for her life, as it is for Jared. And frankly, this is something that neither one of them know how to do because they were both raised with fathers who had a very interesting idea of the law and what it represented and what it is and how, people should function and work within the framework of the law. So I want to say that on some level, they're starting to develop kind of a really bad feeling about how this all is going to unfold. They are really concerned about some of Ivanka in particular, her business arrangement, some of the thing, I mean, of course, all of those patents out of China. But she's really concerned that stuff is going to come out that she doesn't want coming out. And, Jared is the Page of Wands here, right? He's all about talking and making himself seem important, but he doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's not really interested in learning what he's talking about. Everything with him is superficial, right? It's all superficial. There is no depth to this man and frankly his wife, and there is no depth to the way he handles business negotiations, whether they're personal, financial, political. There's no depth, right? Everything is like broad brush strokes. Oh, of course, it's just going to be totally easy to fix that whole problem with Israel. We're just going to snap our fingers and it's going to be gone. Well, you know what? It doesn't work that way, but he doesn't have the ability to dig deep. Okay. There's no depth in him. And so as a result, he has no real, need. He's just never felt a need to dig deep on any one particular issue, and he's always getting rescued, whether that was by his dad or his companies or Saudi Arabia, but somebody's always rescuing him. So he also doesn't really feel a need to change his behavior either, because frankly it works for him. But they are starting to experience a wee little bit of concern about secrets coming out, things that they really want hidden or kept hidden, bubbling up to the surface, and how that could impact their lives, because they're starting to understand that once daddy isn't in the presidency, which means that Bill Barr is not going to be an attorney general anymore. They're starting to figure out that, you know what, this could really not end well for us. So makes you question, oh yeah, there's a lot of worry there. I mean, you've got both the 9 and the 10 of swords sitting here. So there are some anxious feelings going on. There is some worry going on and some stress going on. And a lot of it is just business. Honestly, it's financial, it's selfish. There is a wee little bit of it for old Trump. They're worried that he's becoming almost too erratic to lead. They are worried about his health because he seems to, for some reason, think he is invincible. Whether he feels like he got some inside scoop or knowledge from China or somewhere else, but whatever he got, whatever he received, whatever makes him think he's invincible, he's not. And so there's concern about that. in some ways, they would really like him to just settle down and stop talking. They want him to stop doing those press conferences. They really want him to take a step back and understand that this is not unfolding to his benefit. And they really want him to step back, because that way, if he steps back, Pence surges back into the center and Pence gets blamed. Pence takes the heat. But of course, his ego won't allow that to happen. And so that's creating anxiety and stress and worry for them, because, they recognize not only sort of, I want to use the word politically, but it's not accurate. It's more like their ego, their image, their whatever the heck it is that they think is so important. They understand that could really be impacted and damaged by what's currently going on in the White House, and the way this whole virus situation is being handled, or not handled, as the case, of course, is. So there's that. She really, really, really has bought into her own image of the professional mom, the earth mother who can not only build her business, but raise incredibly wonderful children. It's her image. I don't know that she believes it, but she certainly believes the image of it. She does see herself as a little princess, okay? She sees herself as the princess of the White House, and she thinks that somewhere down the line she can actually become a female president. That's not going to happen for her. But she also, it's as if that whole family lives in this sort of strange place between fantasy and reality. And it's like, the more uncomfortable reality is, the more they buy into the fantasy. They fight to believe it. They struggle to accept it as truth, even when everything tells them this is not going to turn out the way you wanted. They refuse to see with clarity what is going on around them. It's as if the truth gets too uncomfortable, they just slide right into a nice warm bubble bath of crap that comes from a bull out his back end. Okay? They just immerse themselves in the story, in the image, in the spin, because they have nothing else. These people are so shallow. I'm always sort of a little bit sad and a little bit entertained when I focus in on them and read on them, because there is no depth, like none. It is like, it's like scraping the icing off of a cake. And there isn't a lot of icing. That's all the pretty, fluffy image stuff. But it's not very deep until it gets to the cake. And for them, the cake is just emptiness. There is like no depth to these people. There just isn't. It's all about the icing and the image. But they really don't have deep feelings for anybody, anyone, themselves, their family. Like, they really don't. In some ways, they both really function from a place of fear. Fear of antagonizing Trump, fear of disappointing father figures, fear of, not being the chosen one within the family, fear of, being somehow perceived as not part of the, upper echelon, the rich and the famous. It's sort of the illusion that they live in. It's really kind of a sad place to be, because it's not that these two are wildly in love with each other. It's that they see in the other the perfect balance, right? They see in the other the perfect arm candy, and that works both ways. So their partnership really is based on ego and need. And I think part of what really cements them together is the fact that they both came from very corrupt, manipulative families and fathers. And so they perceive that behavior as normal. And again, they can't stand behind that anymore. They're not 12, they're not 18, they're not even 24, okay? They are old enough to take responsibility for their behaviors and their actions, and they're incapable of doing it because they live in a world where as soon as the truth gets uncomfortable, they run away and they hide. They sink into that bubble bath, and that's where they stay until things stop being quite so scary. But there's definitely a sense that they want Daddy Trump to pull back a little bit because they really feel he's getting badly splattered, and they understand that he will not, right? And so are they right now trying to figure out how to protect themselves? I want to say they absolutely are. You know, they are doing whatever they can do so that they try to cement or solidify their assets, what they have to work with. So again, once they're no longer in the White House, the investigations into them are going to be fascinating. And I don't see them escaping. I like, even if Trump sort of makes a deal, somehow or another, these people are not going to completely escape. Are they going to get held to account for every single thing? I don't believe they are, unfortunately. But there is going to be some accounting that goes on. And again, there are another group of people, just like Trump, who in some ways really thinks that they can determine the sincerity or the integrity, if you will, of a business relationship based on personal friendships. So they really believe that if things go bad, China will open their arms, Russia will open their arms, Saudi Arabia will open their arms. And like Trump, they don't understand that tools that lose their effectiveness no longer have a purpose. Okay, so definitely based on this, you've got, again, business relationships that are not balanced, that are not truth. You've got an imbalance of almost everything they do and what's going on. A lot of quid pro quo stuff that's probably going to bubble up to the surface. And that really, in many ways, is going to be the end of the illusions and the delusions that they live with. And they're ultimately going to get left out in the cold. Certainly, it is one of their biggest fear. And frankly, they have every reason to fear that because, again, it's all about the illusions they create. It's not about reality. And so when you get right down to it, really, do they have the assets they say they have? Do they have the money that they say they have? Do they have the business contacts that they say they have? Probably not to the degree that they think and say and believe they do, okay? And there's Daddy. Daddy is just shaking things up faster than he causes so many fires that they are like running around behind him with like a fire hose, okay? They can't stop the crazy fast enough before he is spinning it off again in another direction. And so and the fact that he micromanages everything, right? I mean, they just can't almost get away from his controlling, but he's spinning out of control faster and faster and faster. And the fact that Trump is sort of stuck in Washington and he can't run away and play golf and he can't kind of go anywhere and do anything fun, it's ratcheting up kind of his inability because he can't blow off his steam anywhere except for yelling and screaming and throwing things and breaking stuff. And so it's just harder and harder to get this guy in a place where there is any sense whatsoever of any kind of logic or rationale to the things he thinks or says or does. And so they he is keeping them hopping and running. And as usual, you know, he places the responsibility for everything he does on every other person. And Ivanka and Jared, at this point, because of the situation politically, because they're in the White House with him, etc., they carry the bulk of the responsibility when it comes to him blaming them for things that he doesn't, feel represent him in the best possible way. And they have lost the ability to reason with the guy because he's really sort of gone around a bend. And all he is concerned about is his political fortunes. All they are concerned about is their fortunes, whether that be political or business or in any other way. And so there's a very, very limited view, right? It's all about the greed. And there comes the tower to explain what's going to happen. So I'm going to suggest that they're in for a bit of a bumpy ride. Sort of feels to me like at some point when the smoke clears, that is when you can actually really see how much damage the fire did, right? And they're so used to creating that smoke that, and it comes at people so fast that before you can focus your eyes on the last thing where the smoke has cleared, there's another big bonfire somewhere else. And so they've been able to get away with a lot of stuff simply because the narrative changes so fast these days that even if something they did makes you absolutely insane within 24 or 48 hours, it's vanished because everything is moving so quickly and everything is changing so quickly that it's really hard to stay focused on one thing when everything around you is moving like a tilt-a-whirl, right? It's just spinning almost out of control. So yeah, so that's kind of where they're at. I think that there's stuff going on behind the scenes. I think that there is sort of a real consolidation going on in terms of trying to get things locked in case things don't go well for them. And I also, and I believe I've said this before, I actually don't see, I'm not going to wish ill or ill health on anyone, but I see Jared having to retreat a little bit. It's possible he gets sick. It's possible he's just exhausted. It's possible this virus comes calling on him. Or it's possible that people in the administration literally pull him around a corner, shove his head up against the wall, and say, "Shut the hell up. You don't know what you're doing. Go in your office and vanish." That could also be a possibility. Of course, then Ivanka would go running to Daddy because people were being mean to her, Jared. Spare us. Okay. I think that's it. This is a little shorter than normal, but I feel like we've taken a look at them. I don't see big, huge things, but I do see that there is stuff going on behind the scenes. There is stuff that they can't control. There is stuff that they can control. And it very much feels like they are just trying to keep some sort of control over this piece of dynamite that is the Donald. And they realize that in many, many ways it is beyond their scope and beyond their ability and something that he's simply not going to allow them to get away with or do. And so these are difficult times for them. They're stressful times for them. And this is like the really sad thing. Nobody feels sorry for them because they're shallow. They're greedy. They have no moral compass. They don't care about anything but themselves. And so, wow, who's going to play the "wow, I really feel sorry for you" card? And so it feels very much like they're really not getting a lot of support even from, the Trump lovers, okay? So I guess they're also in for a bumpy ride because it definitely looks I mean, you've got the death cards, you've got the judgment cards, you've got the Tower card, you have the Change of Fortune card, and again, with the Trump family, that is so rarely a good sign. So yeah, there we have it. That's the latest on the Kushners. So, okay, take care, be well, and I'll see you really soon. Bye.